Hey everyone, this is Mason and you're listening to Herb Rally. Today's episode is another edition of the Herbalist Hour, and this time I'm joined by Nicole Telkes. So Amanda and I were visiting Seattle, Washington a few months back, and we were able to hang out with Nicole in person to record this interview. Always love the in-person interviews. And in this conversation, we cover a ton of topics, including how she got into herbalism, her activism, studying with Michael Moore, passionflower, blue vervain, St. John's wort, weedcrafting, and a whole lot more. So huge thanks to Nicole for joining me on the show. Also, before we get into the show, I'd love to thank our presenting sponsor, and that is Oshala Farm. If you're wanting to buy medicinal, high-quality organic herbs and you would like to purchase these herbs where they were grown in the United States, look no further than Oshala Farm at oshalafarm.com. I've been longtime friends with the owners and farmers Elise and Jeff Higley, so I highly trust their business practices, ethics, etc. So they grow and sell over 80 medicinal plant species. They also sell things like elixirs, tea blends, spice blends. They also make their own organic hydrosols, which they make right there on their farm in Southern Oregon. So if you're looking to buy some herbs and you also want to help support Herb Rally, consider shopping at oshalafarm.com and let them know we sent you. Also, big thanks to our Herb Rally Schoolhouse members. We really appreciate your support. If you'd like to learn more about the Herb Rally Schoolhouse, simply go to herbrally.com/schoolhouse, and you could use coupon code podcast at checkout to get your first 30 days for free. So that's going to do it for me today. Enjoy today's episode with Nicole Telkes. Talk to you soon.
Welcome to the Herbalist Hour. This is where community gather, merging the power of people and the flowers, the sweet and the bitter to the salty, the sour. Umami, it's time for the Herbalist Hour.
Welcome back to the Herbalist Hour. Today I'm joined by herbalist Nicole Telkes. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Mason.
Of course, I'm stoked to do this interview here in person instead of via Zoom.
I know.
It's always better in person. So
with plants.
Yeah, lots of plants. We might even go on a little herb walk later.
Yes.
But yeah, we're here in Seattle, Washington. So I'd love to get to know you and your journey a bit more. So how did you get into this whole herbalism thing?
Yeah, it's quite a story. I started my path off as a direct action activist. Most of the work I did was surrounding environmental justice, environmentalism, social justice activism, feminist and feminism in action, lots of animal rights activism. So I was just obsessed with trying to do something to have some sort of impact on the world, because I felt like the world was kind of spinning out of control for me, and I needed to do something that made me feel like I was more of a part of it. So I started working with Sierra Club, Greenpeace, and so I ended up traveling around the entire United States and Mexico, and basically putting my body in the way of a lot of destruction that was happening on the planet. And that's where I first fell in love with the Pacific Northwest, as I was doing direct action campaigns up in the old growth of the Pacific Northwest. And I thought I was going to be this criminal lawyer, and I had gone to school for environmental resource management originally, and botany, and I wasn't feeling like I wanted to sit behind a desk and just kind of take care of the last preserves of whatever it was. So by being on the front lines, I felt like I was having much more of an impact on the planet. But I thought I got into pre-law. I thought I was going to do like criminal law and try to keep my friends out of jail. That was how I started. And then I kept meeting these herbalists out in the middle of the forest. So I would be in the middle of nowhere, and I'd go on a plant walk, and somebody would take me out and they would, show me the plants and how you'd use them. And I was like, this is amazing. And I think that a lot of us who got into herbalism, those first plant walks kind of hooked you.
Totally.
Like you go out there. So I think it's great we can do a little plant walk here, because as soon as you go out with an herbalist, and being in person to me is so much different too. Like you can watch this stuff online, but when you're on a plant walk with somebody, there's some sort of energy that's kind of exchanged. And they talk a lot about it in Ayurveda, this exchange of energy that a teacher gives to their students that you just can't get online. So I do want to plug that with anybody watching plant walks. Try to find somebody, even if they're not an herbalist, that you can go look at plants with, because that's what hooked me, was somebody who could connect to the plants more so than looking at what they looked like. Because as a botanist, I had already studied their morphology and how to identify and all of that. But these were people who were actually taking the plants and using them for healing. And it was that was how I started to connect healing the planet with healing people, and wanting to find a way to do that. And herbalism was that path to me, is trying to get people there. And I recognize, and I tell my students a lot about this, like, my path is not supposed to be everybody's. My path was a little bit more radical than a lot of people's. Some people, it has to do with a health issue where they find herbs. For me, it was finding peace and solace by being out on the front lines and learning about having a different relationship with the plants, not just that I looked at them and I knew their names and I was going to protect them, but that we actually had this long lineage that was thousands of years old, that my ancestors and many people's ancestors have been communicating and working with plants for a long time. So it was my passion. It's something that inspired me and has kept me inspired all these years, is the way that you can, something in me just lit up. And I remember being out in the old growth and hearing the plants sing, and nobody knew. I didn't realize they did that, but there's not a lot of old growth groves left, but there are certain areas you can go. And I was told by other forest activists that they've heard it too, where the forest sings. And I'll never forget that. It was this kind of orchestra of sound throughout the forest, and I committed my life to them right there. As soon as I was there in that special moment, I decided plants were going to be the rest of my life. What I did with them, I don't know, but I'm serving them in some way for the rest of my life.
And it's hard to hear that symphony in the woods, the old growth woods, when you're doing it all online. So I'll second what you're saying. You really, like online learning is great, but it should be an addendum to in-person teachers.
Absolutely.
And most cities or states, you should be able to find some sort of herbalist and go on plant
absolutely.
walks and whatnot.
And I want to say, like, not just herbalists, because when you look for an herbalist, maybe there's somebody who's out there that calls themselves that or not, but even elder neighbors, like you might have somebody who's an elder living next door to you that's a great herbalist, but they don't necessarily call themselves an herbalist. So get to know your neighbors.
Right. Yeah. Or you could go to like Native Plant Society meetings where they're not herbalists per se, but botanists and whatnot. So
people who know plants.
So you went on a plant walk when you were doing all of your activist work. You fell in love with the plants. What led you? Because I already know who one of your main mentors was, but say, like, what went from plant walk to going to decide to take like an herb school? How did that happen?
Yeah. So I met Greta de la Montagne on those plant walks. She was doing like clinics out in the middle of the forests. And I also met Jasmine Cleft, who has Wild Seed School still, and Greta has the MASH clinic. And they were really some of the earliest herbalists who inspired me, because they were doing things for their community, sliding scale, and that really impacted me as an activist, that I wanted things to be accessible. And I saw how herbalism could bring together communities for everything from restoration to medicine making to helping people with their health. So I started to work in several free clinics, and most of them herbal free clinics across the country. At that time, there was an anti-capitalism, anti-global capitalism movement, I guess you could say. It's when the WTO in Seattle happened, and there was a big herb clinic here, and we were learning how to treat pepper spray and tear gas and concussion grenades and all that. So we were on the front lines using herbs in these really intense situations on the streets, and then also off-grid in different sorts of forest activism, desert activism, things like that. So I was traveling around the country, working in clinics and doing trainings. Even back then in the late 90s, I was still, we were doing skill shares and learning how to use herbs with each other, because there weren't a lot of teachers then. And so I went back to Austin after traveling around a lot, and I ended up volunteering at the American Botanical Council, where I ended up getting a job, and there wasn't a lot of internet then, so I had everyone's phone number, and I would call up everyone, and I'd be like, "Hi, Rosemary Gladstar, who should I study with? Hello, Christopher Hobbs, who should I study with?" So I would just call them because I was working for ABC, and I'd have a question about something else, and then I would kind of ask them questions, and everybody was like, if I could study with anybody, it would be Michael Moore.
Wow.
So I was like, I need to just go to Michael Moore. So I ended up leaving Austin after starting a permaculture. I started this whole permaculture project with a group of people called the Rhizome Collective, where I had an herb clinic there, and then I took off for herb school. And that was an amazing experience because I lived in the middle of the desert with, a bunch of crazy herbalists. And there was no contact with anyone else, so I started a free school there. And Juliette Blancaspor was one of our, one of the students with me, and she has chestnut school herbs now. Tanya Neubauer was one of the students with me. A bunch of people who are still practicing in different ways were in that class. And Michael would take about 30 people every year, and 100 would apply, and we were always like, how did he choose us? And I think we were all just like very active, and we had this real passion. Oh, Laurel Luddite was also in that class. She did this is anarcho-herbalism thing on Michael's website. So a lot of us were very passionate about herbalism. We weren't really sure how we were going to make a living with it, but we wanted to do free clinics. We wanted to do things to educate. Everyone in the classes seemed to be really passionate about herbalism. So we were thinking either he threw darts or it was something about...
Were there phone interviews and all that, or? No,
you sent in a paper, like you'd have to fill out your paper application and then send it in, and they would get back to you with a phone call, and I can barely remember. It was a while back, so yeah.
Do you have any, Michael Moore stories you'd like to share?
Yeah, I mean, Michael was one of my great influences, and what I think about him, I think about how kind he was and how shy. And he was so giving and so generous, but at the same time, kind of grumpy-ish at the same time, like a little grumpy, but not really grumpy. He was a kind of a comedian underneath of it. So he had a lot of puns, had a lot of different ways of bringing stories and a life to herbalism. And all the while, I feel like he could read your mind, because you'd be thinking about something in class. Maybe it wasn't even something you should be thinking about. Maybe it was something that was inappropriate. And he would suddenly start talking about it. And so some of us were like, is he reading our minds, or does he just, I don't know. So, and it was an experience, being in those classes. You were there 4 days a week, all day long, and you sat and you listened and you stretched and you took breaks to eat, but you were there all day listening to him lecture. And I do believe he had a photographic memory, because he could take a distribution map of, say, arnica that was from the Forest Service, and he'd be like, well, yeah, this is arnica, but it's not right. It's really like this, and then it's over here, and this, like, he'll talk about cordifolia or something, and he would show the exact distribution. And Donna, his partner, told me that he spent most of his life in his RV just traversing North America, figuring out where everything was and how it worked and trying it out on himself. So very much into experience, because again, there were not many teachers.
Right.
So when he was studying, and Rosemary Gladstar and a lot of my elders, you were training yourself.
Right.
Because there wasn't really anyone to go to.
Yeah.
And that is another part of the story.
Let's hear it.
Well, I think that we've got real spoiled because, people can not spoiled, I should say. We've got real comfortable with the idea that herbalism is out. You can be an herbalist and be out. You can be, you can say things like, I'm a witch.
Yeah.
And it's kind of popular now.
Totally.
Oh, I'm a witch. You can be walking down the streets, some parts of the world, and maybe even be out as LGBTQIA. Yeah. And not too long ago, there was nowhere that you could do any of that. And I'm not saying that it isn't. There's different. I'm not going to try to say that we're the same as somebody who is LGBTQIA necessarily, but there's a lot of different kinds of modalities and ways that people identify that up until recently were dangerous.
Yeah.
And for LGBTQIA people, still very dangerous in a lot of places. It's not very safe, right? But for herbalists, I think it's a lot easier for us to say, I'm an herbalist, I do this, I forage, I go out there. In Michael's time, that was not safe. Yeah. So I just remember him teaching us, like, be sneaky, do not get caught. Like, this is not something you want people seeing you doing. This is not okay with the general population. So he would tell us to tell people we were botanists, not herbalists, because they would immediately think you're growing weed,
right.
Which still happens today. But and maybe some herbalists now do grow weed because they can legally. But different times called for different ways of approaching things, and that's in terms of wildcrafting, in terms of identification of yourself and what you're using for herbs. Everything needs to evolve and change because it is a folk tradition. So I think that's where we are now. But where we were was very different. It was not, like, even doing first aid work as an herbalist, you had to kind of be a little bit on the down low, and you still have to because it's not licensed. Yeah. So you shouldn't be doing anything that could be looked at as a licensed activity. Mm-hmm. So diagnosing, prescribing, and treating, you still have to be very aware of how you are acting and act correctly and safely with people so that we don't end up losing the ability to call ourselves clinical herbalists or herbalists, right? So I just feel like I'm really lucky to be at a time where I can walk outside and say, I'm a witch, really loud, and people are just going to look at me and shrug their shoulders and think it's cute, or I'm a herbalist, and people go, oh, well, what do you do? Like, they're actually interested now. So it's a different time.
Especially here in Seattle, it might be a bit of a bubble.
It is.
Just a quick break from the show to thank our presenting sponsor, Oshala Farm. Oshala Farm is a beautiful and vibrant certified organic herb farm based in Southern Oregon, where they grow and sell over 80 different plant species. The founders, Elise and Jeff Higley, have been longtime friends, so I highly trust their growing methods and ethics. You'll love the potency and vibrancy of all the herbs they have to offer. To learn more and purchase their herbs and other organic goods, head to oshalafarm.com. So thanks once again to Oshala Farm for sponsoring the Herbalist Hour. Now back to the show. Enjoy. So how did you end up practicing as an herbalist?
Yeah, good question, Mason. So I, after learning everything I could, I went and studied, all over the country, because back in my day, things were a lot cheaper, and you didn't have to really uproot yourself the same way. It's still uprooting, but the financial risk that is now for somebody to move is a lot more profound. So I want to, verbalize that, because as I talk about the future of herbalism, I want to think about like how the world's changed since even since COVID. Right? Because we're in a a new world now. So I ended up practicing as an herbalist. I studied all over the place. I went and got into body work, and so I studied Zen Shiatsu, and then Ayurveda. I went to the Ayurvedic Institute a bit. I also went to massage school with the first mom that was a first water birth mom. So it was a lot of breath work, and then ended up doing a lot of structural massage. So I blended my herbalism into massage to make a living, and did a lot. I had an herb line for a while. First one was Medusa's Garden, and then people told me that wouldn't be acceptable on the shelf. Now it would, right? But people thought that it wouldn't sell as well, so I changed it to Wild Spirit Botanicals, and that was what went to federal court when I was sued by Shire City with the other two of my co-defendants. I got to bring in my old fire cider invoices from like 2003 from Wild Spirit and Medusa's Garden, and there was a big Medusa on the side of the courtroom, which will probably never happen again, because that was my logo. And so I had a herb line, and for a long time I did. And when GMPs came in, I kind of pushed away from that because it got real complicated. And so I still do some, herbal formulation for clients and students, and I have old clients that will still hit me up for some of the balms I make and creams. But I really love teaching, and so I got into education, and for me, I love watching people light up the way I lit up when I first got into herbalism and was on my first plant walk. So anything I can do to get people addicted to herbalism and make it more, not just an addiction, but in a lifestyle for the rest of their life. So I think of it as herbalism every day. I want my students to end up incorporating the herbal lifestyle into the rest of their life, because to me, it's a way to connect with the planet and connect to yourself in a real way. So herbalism to me with students isn't just taking an herb, but it's sitting next to herbs, it's growing herbs, it's smelling them, it's drawing them, it's doing something that brings you closer to the outdoor world every day, because that's what gives me peace. So I find that that's what gives a lot of people peace, that we are so disconnected from the outside world. That I was just doing a little plant walk with some at-risk youth, and they were so worried about the bees and the bugs and and everything around them that could have poke or sting. And so I had them sting themselves with nettles, and then showed them an herb that would fix it. And suddenly they started to relax a little bit, knowing that they could be outside and it's not a dangerous place. It's a place that they can get relaxed and feel more comfortable in. And I say that coming from living in Texas most of my life, where everything bites, burns, stings, pricks, or has some sort of venom. I still enjoy being outside more than anywhere. And so now I have the privilege of moving into different bioregions and being able to live in different areas and practice in different areas a lot more than I ever had. So right now, as I practice seeing clients, and I practice as an educator and as in gardens. I manage gardens and take care of gardens. So especially after COVID, I ended up, my practice, and I want everybody who listens to this to know that if you are an herbalist, if this is your everyday life, it's going to change with you. One day you're going to be doing podcasts for Herb Rally. The next day, maybe you're selling fire cider. I don't know. It could be that you decide to go in a different direction. That is not how you measure success. Even if you decide not to make money off of it, is not what's successful. What's successful is, are you connecting to the plants every day? Are you connecting yourself to the planet every day in some way? That's success to me. And so when I think about like what I ended up in COVID going all online, and I have this whole online program now and all these online resources and libraries and all these different things, and I'm still adding to it somewhat, but I slowed down afterwards because I realized after 3 or 4 years of that, because I had to do that I really missed the plants. So then I started working with plants outside again. And who knows what the next incarnation will be, as long as I keep that relationship building with plants in different ways. And they never steer me wrong. And I think that's the one thing I want listeners to really know, is that as long as you trust the plants, you put your trust in them, you offer yourself to them, they never steer you wrong. You will always be okay. They will always take care of you, as long as you're like, I put my hands in the hands of the plants. I don't know what's going to end up happening, but I know that they're going to take care of me. And they do. And they always will. So I've seen that now. I mean, I remember when I felt so disconnected in some ways, all of a sudden an article about being disconnected and what plants to take would come across a desk that I was working at ABC, or, you know, you're walking along and you feel anxiety and suddenly there's a passionflower right next to you. Like those sorts of things. Or it was so funny. I was working in a garden and I was talking about lobelia, and then I'd turn around and there's a lobelia that nobody knew was growing there. It suddenly pops up and everyone's like, "That, I didn't know that was there." They come, they are attracted to us. They love attention. In fact, us sitting around all these plants are eating it up. They are hams. They're like, she's talking about me. And like, look at this poke. I mean, it's just like, I'm so awesome. All of them around us, they love attention. So whether we're eating them or watering them or growing them or using them, I believe that it's this long relationship where humans have always breathed out and they're breathing in and we're breathing in, and it's this constant back and forth with the plants that has kept us in this little obsession with each other. Have you read The Botany of Desire?
That's Michael Pollan. Yeah, it's been a while, but yeah.
Yeah, but it's all about like, are we choosing to put the plants certain places, or are they kind of manipulating us to put it there? And I love that book because it's so good because it's true that like we think we're doing all this stuff with plants, but it may just be that they're using us for their own, you know, needs and wants. So yeah, so like right now my practice is evolving and changing, and what I want to see this next year is I'm going to go back into physical practice. I've been doing clinical practice online. I'm going to start seeing people in person again, and then I'm going to start doing more intentional gatherings of smaller groups of people, either in the desert or in Texas or in the Pacific Northwest, where we come together camping and learning the land and doing flower essences and learning how to be better stewards together in different bioregions. So, as well as the clinical practice. So a little of everything.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
Because that's what an herbalist does. You have to always be kind of going after what the herbs want you to do. So, so that's where I'm at right now.
Lots of hats. Yeah, I wanted to comment too. I interviewed Michael Skeeter Pilarski, who runs Friends of the Trees, and he says one of his demonstration herb gardens is right next to this really popular hard cidery, and so they get lots of tourists coming in all the time. And he says all of the human attention that's given to those plants, they're just so
love
loved.
It, right?
Yeah, they love it.
They love it. They're hams.
I thought that was really cool how you put that, and I couldn't agree more. Speaking of the events that you're going to be potentially hosting, I think this would be a good time to talk about the Wildflower School of Botanical Medicine. I think you should definitely plug that, as well as the couple books that you've even written. But why don't we hear about your herb school, and if you do have any upcoming events.
So Wildflower School was started in 2003, and you know it's kind of like a practical herbalism school. So a lot of our students, what I'm really proud of, I think I just smacked my mic. What I'm really proud of with my students is that a lot of them come out of the school and put themselves into the community. And over 20 years, this is our 20th year in Texas. So
Congrats.
we have been, a lot of people are always like, oh, you're an herbalist? What do you grow?
Yeah.
And I always say I grow herbalists because that, I mean, as much as I love herbs, I love watching people grow into being herbalists. So I get super excited to watch students take off on their own journeys and do interesting things. So we have 20 years of that in Austin, and now I'm excited to start being more accessible to more people in more bioregions. And I'm still online, so we do a lot of online learning with people. But I have the bulk of we have a lot of classes that go on in Austin because it's been there for 20 years, you know, the school's been there for 20 years. But now I'm going to be bringing in some of these intensives where we can get together and do these intentional learning. And I think that's, when I talked about accessibility, I don't feel like we're living in the same world. And I've just been reflecting a lot over the past year about how I want to evolve the school again. And I see great inequities. I see some people who are doing better than ever financially, and a lot of people who are doing worse than ever. And how do you make sense of that as a school owner? And so we're trying to do a lot of sliding scale classes, sliding scale offerings. People can ask for some scholarships. We don't have a lot because we're a small herb school. So that's the sad thing. A lot of people think, oh, I'm going to get a scholarship. Well, it's really difficult to make that happen. So we have a little bit for that.
Sure.
But we're trying to find ways to make things more accessible for more people. So as far as that goes, the school is going to have online learning. It's going to have these intensives, and then we have programs. So we have everything from beginners programs in Texas to intermediate programs, and then I'm going to be doing advanced apprenticeships that are clinically based and professionally based. And they're going to center around Texas and the Pacific Northwest. So people can choose where they are, and when I'm going to be there, I'll be offering some different advanced trainings, advanced medicine making, advanced offerings in energetics, and how to approach that in practice, weed crafting, bioregionalism, that sort of thing. And so this book, Herbcraft, came out of the pandemic, because this was basically the beginners program that I wanted to get put down, and then I want to add all the other stuff I do into it. So this is kind of how to approach herbalism as an everyday herbalist. And so I bring in seasonal living. And, you know, one thing that Michael Moore said that a lot of the teachers I worked with said, and activists, in fact, too, Zapatistas and others, are that you need to take care of your own first. You need to practice from your own place first. You need to know who you are first before you start practicing from other cultures. Or you shouldn't be practicing from other cultures. You should be using your own roots, right? So Michael was always saying, I'm a white guy from LA, so I'm not going to use any of these energetic models that other cultures have, because that's not me. And I also believe very strongly, like at our school, like I will dip into a little bit about Ayurveda, TCM, because I am trained in different, in those medicines. But I practice Western holistic herbalism because I think that it's important that we look at our Western traditions, and that's my lineage.
Yeah.
I'm first generation American. My family was displaced from war and came here and had me, and I, just like a lot of people, don't have thousands of years of tradition that connects me to North America. So we have to find different ways to do that. And so seasonal living's one of that. I also do a lot on weed crafting, not wild crafting in here, and even some botany, different lessons. Because I think when you start, this was meant to be a beginner's book, because when you start with herbalism, I chose the top things that people came to me as an herbalist for. So what do you do when somebody's in pain? And so there's a whole chapter on pain. What do you do when you have wounds? But I didn't do it by body system necessarily, because I think that as a beginner, you want to just know, how do you take care of yourself? So there's a lot of materia medica in here too, and different ways to connect to the planet and yourself from this environmental feminist perspective that I have.
Who designed the cover?
So I love that
That's
you asked
beautiful.
that. So it's funny because I had a graphic designer student who helped me with my website, and we worked on this logo. This is our logo now.
Yeah,
and
for the school,
we
right?
we worked on it for a year because she would send me something. I'm like, that's not it, because it was supposed to incorporate my Eastern European heritage a little bit, but it's a prickly pear.
Right.
So it's got a little bit of that, because we all are a mishmash of so much that makes us who we are, right?
Yeah.
And then, of course, my love note to Texas was the medicinal plants of Texas that I wrote about 10 years ago, and I'm going to be adding a lot more too, because I have a lot to do as far as writing goes. But I need another pandemic. That might happen soon, right? But yeah, so that's some books that people can pick up that I also do weedcrafting, not wildcrafting, in this. And what was great during the pandemic is I did an online course that went with this. So people all over Texas now, because it's such a big state, can pick this up and do the course and kind of learn how to be a bioregional herbalist in different parts of Texas. And the Herbcraft goes with my beginner's course that's basically, for anyone, anywhere that wants to know how to get started.
Awesome.
So.
Well, we're not in Texas. We're here in Seattle, Washington.
Right.
Would you be open to doing, say, like a mini plant walk?
Absolutely.
Of sorts?
I do plant walks all the time in Seattle. So, and I've been, moving between the Pacific Northwest, Texas, and the whole West Coast for over 25 years now. So, and East Coast a little bit, but I'm really a Western herbalist. I know a lot of West and Texas plants. And what's funny is we're sitting we don't even need to do a plant walk. What if we did a plant sit? And I just point and we move the camera. How's that?
Let's do it.
Because whenever we do it, you've been on so many plant walks, I'm sure, where somebody's just like,
it's not really a walk.
Oh, it's not a walk. It's a plant ditch walk is what my friend always says. We were in the ditch. What's interesting about the garden that we're in is that a lot of these are European herbs. And so it's a very Eurocentric garden because we're up in higher, where we are in the country is much more in alignment with Europe, right? So it's interesting, where I first learned my herbalism, completely different bioregion, but at the same time, this beautiful passion flower is actually really big in the South. It doesn't really do well here in the North as much, but it's been a hot year. And with global warming, it might just do well now, from now on. I noticed that with the Vitex this year too, because Vitex last year could barely do it. The passion flower last year was kind of coming out, but this year with the heat, these plants, when you have passion flower, it doesn't really like to get going till it's like 80 plus out. And then its first leaves come up because the soil has to get warm enough. So it's perennial, and it's living in that soil, just waiting for it to get warm enough, and then bam, they call it May pop in the South because it comes up in May when it gets warm. So here, it didn't start getting going till probably late July is when it started to really come up. And things up in the north are fast and furious because they only get 3 months to really get all their biomass out there in them, to reproduce. And so everything gets real busy real fast. So this is growing at a very quick rate, very speedy rate. So one thing about passion flower you'll notice is these lobed leaves. And I don't see any blooms on it right now, so I won't go. That's sad because, as a close-up on the film, that would be an amazing close-up because everyone loves passion flowers. But this is one of my favorite teas for anxiety. And I just remember that this is a big one in the South and everywhere for anxiety. And I remember one of my students was so worried that something had to be wrong with it because she was taking all these anxiety meds and she started taking passion flower, and she's like, I just have to drink a cup of tea. There's got to be something wrong with it. There's got to be an interaction. There's got to be something wrong. And, there's a few potential drug interactions that could be there. But all in all, it's a pretty safe plant. So having and a lot of people worry, oh, do I need a flower? Well, if you're in the South where this is everywhere, you can be very particular. But here, all you need is the leaves, and the leaves can be dried. You can do glycerites, you can do tinctures. But what's nice about it is it's one of the few nervines that taste pretty okay. You know how you've tasted like we can look at the vervain.
Blue vervain, yeah.
Oh man. One of my students in Texas, he said, that's like tasting vervain. And then we have native passionflower, native vervain down there. But he said vervain is like a alligator got its tail caught in barbed wire and is smashing it around. And I was like, wow, that is definitely an image of what vervain tastes like, because it's just this explosion in your mouth of bitter, acrid. Yeah. This, on the other hand, even though both of them are sedatives, the passion flower tends to just be a little calming, little anti-anxiety, doesn't have a lot of taste and flavor to it, so you could give it to a lot of people and they're not going to complain. Vervain? Yeah. Heck no. You try to give vervain to somebody and they'll be like, bleh. In fact, let's taste it.
Here we go.
Mason.
One of my personal allies.
Let's take a leaf here and let's chew on a leaf of vervain. You tell me if it tastes like an alligator that got its. This is not a native one though. The native ones are a lot to Texas. This isn't.
Oh yeah.
It's got that really bitter, acrid, and you know what I say that vervain's like compared to passion flower. This is for anxiety. This is great. This will help you sleep. But vervain, it's like almost like herbal Xanax. So like when you are super stressed out and people are pissing you off and you cannot listen to anyone anymore, that's what you take.
Probably why it's my plant ally.
Because it actually diminishes the hypothalamic and pituitary axis. It calms everything down so that, you know, when you're stressed out and things are too loud, this actually takes that down so that things don't sound too loud anymore. It's and also for hot, angry, frustrated people. So that's why it's a midsummer herb. I think it's funny because it's always out when it's hot. Yeah. And if you're hot, this is the plant for you. It's also a diaphoretic. It's going to, really chill you out. And that's why they say that you can use it for menopausal complaints when there's a lot of angst, because this helps you to relax. It's very sedating. And I also, there's a prairie variety that I've found is exceptionally good for IBS. So in particular, you could even try this blue vervain here, but I find that there's that bitter component really hits the gut. And I've had several clients that I've worked with who had IBS that were able to get off their meds with just like 5 to 10 drops of vervain before meals. They would do a few drops and it settled their gut down to where they didn't have all the, the evacuations that happen with IBS. So this is a really good one for stress in the tummy. And whereas the passion flower is good for stress in the heart. Did I just do it again? Stress in the heart. So vervain, you'll see there's heart palpitations associated with this one too. If somebody has heart palpitations, anxiety, stress, vervain or passion flower. If it's vervain, it's that they have digestive stress, that their stress is held in their tummy. So that's how I see. There's something that many herbalists will speak about, is that you can have a whole class of plants that are known as calming, but there's all these distinctions about them that really, it's not the books that tell you as much as watching it in practice. Because I can watch this happen with people where somebody has heart palpitations and stress, and I give them passion flower, it calms. If I give them vervain, it doesn't. So it's about watching people do things. So that's where we say organoleptic, is part of the thing, is learning through experience. So, so in this little plant sit, one of the plants that I can see, and that you could probably do a close-up of later, is aconite. And it's related to some other, nervous system plants. And, one of the things I'll be teaching at the AHG this fall, they have a theme on low-dose botanicals and then legacy, right? And part of our herbal legacy And what Michael had been bringing back was this whole idea of the eclectics and the physiomedicalists that were herb docs. And they were using things, using herbs as drugs. They were considered like drugs. They were herb doctors that were using these drugs. So aconite, I think it was one of the first herbs that he taught in class was aconite. And I was sitting there like, whoa, that's a way to start an herb class. Not like, I don't know, Achillea. I feel like aconite, I guess Achillea, yeah, I don't know. Maybe it was Achillea first, but he would go in ABC order.
Okay. Yeah.
So it would be like, A is for blank. And we were in the A's for like 4 of the months, of the 6 months. And we're like, when are we getting out of the A's?
Yeah.
But so aconite, aconite veratrum and gelsemium were all taught together. And what I think that part of our herbal legacy in North America is that these plants were used in practice, and there is documentation to show how these plants are used, but they can also kill you.
Yeah.
And the difference between poison and medicine is dosage, right? So it's all how you approach the plant. And this plant in particular, aconite, is excellent for severe issues in neuralgia and, let's say you slipped a disc, you're out in the forest, all you have is aconite, you're in severe pain, you can't get to a hospital, you could use a leaf topically and numb out that pain. Now, if you ingest it, you might numb out your entire face and even stop your heart. I mean, there's, central nervous system is going to shut down if you start taking aconite, right? So the difference between poison and dosage is, or poison and medicine is dosage. Even with food, you can get toxic with food, right? Like that you can eat too much of carrots and you turn orange, right? I mean, dosage is real everywhere.
Yeah.
So aconite is a plant that is definitely, I hear a little froggy is responding to.
Saw a bunny over there.
Uh-huh. Yeah, so aconite is a plant that you need to be respectful of, but I think what we don't have in Western herbalism in the US that they do in England is level 1, level 2, level 3 herbs, right? Or they actually have like practitioner level herbs. And I think it's something we need to do in the US because things like tincture of arnica should not be on the store shelf.
Right.
Or aconite needs to be, it doesn't mean that you go out and harvest aconite because it gets rid of pain. So does skullcap. Like there's certain things that the average person could use, which is like skullcap for pain or California poppy for pain or even poppy for pain. But aconite needs to be reserved for practitioners only, people who this is their craft, this is what they do, they're very careful, they're skilled, they're trained, and they understand the risks. But we don't have that kind of, everything's on Instagram.
Right.
So, you get ghost pipe out on Instagram and somebody's like, it's for pain. I'm going to harvest it. There's a ton of plants that we can use for anxiety, pain, or other things. And that's why when you're a bioregional herbalist, you're not just looking at, and that's what I, think of with myself and why I went to Michael's school. And we're bringing him up a lot in this because there's a whole new launch that we'll be talking about at the end of this.
Totally.
But I think as a bioregional herbalist, you're looking for plants that grow, that are native, that are the same genus, but maybe a different species in your area. So there are native aconites in the Pacific Northwest. The one that's in this garden is not. But you can, or this vervain is not the native one, but there are native vervains, and there's also invasive vervains. So as a bioregional herbalist, when I'm foraging, I'm actually looking for the invasive plants. So there's a Verbena brasiliensis, and I've seen it more than a few places, and it's a huge vervain that's totally invasive in Texas. I think I've seen it here too, in the Pacific Northwest. I wasn't sure though. And those are the ones I forage, the invasive plant medicine that is not supposed to be in that bioregion, but is growing it prolifically. So here, I noticed lemon balm has become wild in the old growth.
Oh.
So if you're going to be wanting to gather a plant out of the forest, don't gather ghost pipe or Oregon grape. Gather the lemon balm that is a European invasive that is coming into the forest. Or nettles. Nettles is a European invasive that's growing into the forest. Some nettles are, some nettles aren't. That's also a point of contention. But as far as what you use as herbs, it should really be according to the weeds that are really trying to speak to you in the area. So for example, St. John's wort that's there, living in the South, this is St. John's wort. So living in the South, that does not grow in the South. It will not grow. You cannot get it to flower in the South. And here it's flowering all over the place. And how do we use it? It's a euphoric, to elevate the mood. It's also antiviral. It's got all these other uses, and also for nerve pain and inflammation, right? Magic plant turns the oils red. It's amazing. Can't get it to grow in the South. I used to have to send off every year to my friends if I wasn't traveling. Please send me fresh St. John's wort. I'll send you passionflower. I'll send you vervain. I'll send you ragweed, because ragweed's huge down there. So you can actually go back and forth from bioregion to bioregion and trade plants, and that's so fun. We started on Facebook, which has been endorsed by Jim McDonald as the best thing on Facebook, is the Medicinal and Edible Plant and Seed Locator
Oh,
group.
yeah.
And so there's like 10,000 of us on there, and I started that years ago as a way to trade, but from a sustainable focus. So we take down posts where people are trying to sell
Ghost pipe.
Stuff like that. So, but it's a great place to trade
awesome.
things like St. John's wort, and when you have to get it fresh, and it has to be something that you put directly into oil or tincture fresh. So St. John's wort's a special plant. It's also, did you know that it's also a talisman against all evil?
Did not.
So if you're feeling like if something's not right and you feel it around you, carrying around a little talisman of that's supposed to neutralize all negative vibes, evil, whatever. So it's like a neutralizer. So and it's a pretty neat plant to know and love, and it grows as a roadside weed up in the Pacific Northwest. So gotta love it. Invasive, and definitely something that has become well known up here and loved, right?
Absolutely.
Any other plants you want me to talk about?
Yeah, I think that was a great plant sit. I think that's...
Oh, let's talk about poke, though.
Yeah,
that's another low
This
dose.
is one I'm not too familiar with, so that'd be great.
So this is another difference between, so we have level 1, level 2, level 3. Level 1 herbs to me, and I talk about this in my book, is food and nutritive, like things that you could eat all the time, and they pretty much, it's like food. It's not going to hurt you. Things like alfalfa or nettles or things like that. They're food medicine, food herbs. So level 1. Level 2 is going to be things that sedate or stimulate, and I believe some of this teaching is also stuff that I had picked up and modified from what's her name? She was in Eugene long ago. She had an herb school there. Oh, I can't remember. But anyway, she had some of this too, because I'll think of her name later. But level
Cheryl
2 herbs. No. She had, it's like a witchy school now. But she was talking about the different levels of herbalism, and you'll see it all over England where they will level up different plants. So when we have a plant that sedates or stimulates or moves things, I'd say that's more like level 2. So passionflower or vervain or even like elderberry is a level 2, which we have over here. But level 3 are going to be practitioner only, almost just drug-like effects that you really need to know how to use. And poke is one of these. So poke is, it's got a lot of toxicity as aconite. And we made a succus out of this, out of some juice last year that we made. And the most toxic part of this plant is the seeds of the berries, right? So we wanted to show that if you did it correctly, you didn't get sick. And this was thanks to lovely Lisa Ganora had a little succus video. So we followed the directions and did a little juice with it. And so you just have to be really careful to strain out all the seeds, and you can take little bits of the juice, and it's known as an alterative. The root is also an alterative. It's an immuno stimulant, lymphagogue. Not as much of an immunostimulant, I should say lymphagogue, strong lymphagogue associated with cancer. So you'll see that if there's swellings, and especially after breast cancer where you'll get a lot of swelling in the arms, a lot of times poke root will be used in small drop dosage to move the fluid through the body. It's strong lymphagogue. And then the berries in small amounts without the seeds, or else you might hurt yourself really badly. And that can also be used a little bit as a tonic to in lymphagogue as well. But really it's the root and practice that you'll see in Western herbalism. And I have used it with people who've had infections in their I'll do like a small drop dosage in formula with other herbs that when I'm dealing with like genital infections or some sort of post-surgery swelling, things like that. And, you know, and as far as lymphagogues go, there's a realm of lymphagogues. You'll go, cleavers would be level 1, red root or ocotillo level 2, and then poke level 3. Those are all lymphagogues, but it's how strong they are. And, you know, one thing that what made Michael so different was that he wanted to understand how he would read up a little bit about ocotillo, right? And he read a little bit about the Apaches and how they used ocotillo. And then he's like, I want to learn this plant. So he read one of the physiology books from cover to cover twice, Donna said, and then he started taking ocotillo every day and mapping out how his physiological response was taking large amounts of it every day. So he put his money where his mouth was. He was taking these herbs that had he couldn't get any information on except some ethnobotanical knowledge, because as we know, there was huge genocide here with all the tribes and all the knowledge. So there's bits and sprinklings of that knowledge left, and he formed real relationships with people also in different tribes to get some of the knowledge back that had been kind of cast aside with the Flexner report and all our herbal history getting destroyed, which is in this book, all our herbal history being destroyed. That's a whole nother shit show. Why we're here now trying to figure it out has been planned and coordinated by the Rockefeller and Carnegie Foundation in the Flexner report of 1910, which is our herbal history. If you don't know it, you should learn it.
Where would one learn that in the book?
Well, I have it in my book, but it's also any sort of, like if you look at some of the old eclectic and physiomedicalist texts, that you'll see that everything stops at about 1880, 1890. The AMA came up, and then 1910, the AMA, funded by the Rockefeller and Carnegie Foundation, sent this guy Flexner around, and he shut down most of the herb schools around the country, most of them that were herb doctoring schools, like botanics and all the Lloyd, you know, you have the Lloyd Library left, but you'd have all these schools that were going on, and some of them were 6 months, some of them were a year. All of that got shut down, and now we have books left, and that's what Michael rediscovered and brought back, and he hand scanned all of that. And then now you see many modern herbalists starting to practice in those realms, but he was the first one to bring back percolations in the 80s at Brightonbush. So that sort of thing had been lost and cast aside, and as far as we know, he was the one he was a big hermit and would go and like sit for weeks figuring all this stuff out, or months, and he was even downstairs at the Lloyd Library hand scanning all the books to take and photo print, and everything you see on his site is all hand done.
There really is an herbal resurgence happening, and a lot of that is thanks to Michael Moore and Donna Chesner and all their
Yeah,
work. Yeah.
yeah, and I mean that's the thing that I think we have to remember, and why I'm bringing him up a lot now is I'm doing this intensive on him with Greta de la Montagne, somebody who I owe a lot to, and we are doing this intensive on the life and legacy of Michael. I have a lot of teachers that I haven't even mentioned, so please forgive me, all of you who are watching this that are my teachers, Margie and all of the Filiberto, Maria Elena, not that Maria Elena is going to be watching YouTube, but all the people who've taught me my herbalism. I have hundreds, if not more teachers, from my students to my elders, and Michael was one of the big influences, and so we're redoing his website. We just formed a nonprofit, and we're going to be doing the life and legacy of Michael Moore at the American Herbalist Guild. So it was natural to bring him in a bunch to this, this interview, because he has done so much for the herb world. And the big thing is he was pretty much what we would call an anti-capitalist. Mm-hmm. So he was very accessible. Yeah. You did have to go, as long as you were okay with leaving everything and going to the desert, which a lot of people were at that time. And, the idea is that he wanted all of his stuff to be free. Yeah. Everything on his website's free. He wants it all to remain free. Donna wants it to remain free. Amazing. So we're redoing the site to make sure that it's there and people can donate to keep it going. So we did a 501c3, but the idea is that we want this to continue, and what he started to continue, and he started his own physiological or constitutional physiology model that still needs more reworking. People need to start working with it. So we want to keep that tradition going. And even though it's a short lineage, if you look at Ayurveda or some of the tribes that have been here thousands of years, like 10,000 years, it's a shorter lineage. We have a couple hundred years of trying to figure it out. And then he's part of that, physio-medicalist eclectic tradition. We need more, and we need people to have discussions, not on Facebook, but actually real discussions with each other about how to further the medicine. Yeah. Where do we go to make it even better? How do we because that's what physicians did. They were always furthering, not that we're physicians,
right.
but we do a lot of the things that those early physicians did with herbs, as long as we're not diagnosing, prescribing, or treating with herbs.
That's right. That's right.
But we can enhance people's lives in many ways. So, yeah.
Will the website be swsbm.com still?
Yeah, everything's going to stay the same. We're even looking at trying to keep a little vault of what it used to look like. That's so cool. People could still see it. We're trying to keep the colors the same. A lot of things on there. I used to teach a class to my students on how to navigate that site. Uh-huh. And they were like, hilarious. Oh, because they had no idea what was on there. There's so much on that site. Yeah. And it's so hard to know where things are. So I would teach them, this is there, you need this part, don't worry about this part. All these resources are here. So now we're going to kind of evolve it for the modern brain a little bit. And then AI is going to probably come and throw the internet out the door, and we won't have a website. Right. It'll be just like, it'll click into your head or something. Bizarre. I don't know. But yeah, it's going to be redone, and we're getting close. We're reviewing the site right now, and we've been doing updates for 2 years. We've been doing that. So that's a side project, because as an herbalist, you will always wear many hats, because that's the life of an herbalist.
That's right. Well, you and Greta have your work cut out for you. That's insane. Like you said, there's so much on the website.
There is, but the thing is, Donna Chesner, Michael's partner, has been helping us, and also we are building.
Shout out Donna.
Yes. Donna. And we're also building an advisory committee made up of old students and alumni that are going to help to guide things as we move forward too. And there's also a memorial garden that is in Tucson so people can visit, and we have a couple other memorial gardens going on that show like bioregional herbalism. I believe Krista and Greta consider theirs to be a memorial garden. And
Sinadinos?
Yeah, Sinadinos. Doesn't everyone know who I'm talking about? I mean, so yeah, there's a lot that has been going on that end as I work in gardens and see clients and teach. That's one of the other hats that I'm wearing.
Amazing. Well, I have to ask before we get into the fun questions, do you have any idea what Michael Moore's SWSBM logo is?
No one does.
Okay, no one does.
No one does. Will always be a mystery.
Okay. I've asked numerous people and nobody knows. So
no, I've asked Donna, I've asked a lot of people and nobody knows.
It was reserved for Michael.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure it's some sort of esoterica knowledge because I mean, it's a dragon, right? So a lot of people have tried to give me what they thought it was, but I mean, who knows? It's Michael.
Well, if you're watching on the YouTube channel, feel free to comment below.
Yeah, comment.
If you have any insight or what you might think it means. But well, let's try a new segment out. It's called Explain That Gram. And for those of you that you watch YouTube.
Oh, wait.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, go
okay,
ahead.
All right.
Say it.
I directly stole this from a show called Hot Ones, which is an interview show on YouTube. So basically, I'm going to show you a picture from one of your Instagram accounts, and you can just kind of tell the story behind it as briefly as you like, or in as depth as you like. Here it is.
Wait, which one is that?
So this is, I think it's the more recent one.
Recent one?
Yeah.
Okay. That is a picture of me and the Firesider ladies. So I'm one of the Firesider 3, and that's Rosemary, who was our cheerleader, and she was, and I want to make sure everyone knows, Rosemary was never sued, y'all. I keep hearing that. That is not what happened. Me, Kathy, and Mary were the ones that got sued for whatever reason. We still don't know. But well, whatever reason that truly was about, we don't know. But we got sued, we won, and we won in 2019, which was the last time I saw you. Right. It was so crazy when you came walking in because I was like, been 4 years. Right. So I was at the Free Herbalism Project, and we were announcing it on the West Coast, and they were announcing it at the AHG on the East Coast, and we timed it so everybody heard at the same time that we won, and Firesider is free, and it was such a good story because we all needed that because we were in the throes of like Trumpism and all that other stuff. Sorry if you like him. I don't. So it'll come back. Don't worry. He'll be back. So we were in the throes of all this like just negative stuff, and so to have something really positive where like this David and Goliath thing where, you know, we won and the big corporation didn't, and just to set it straight, the big corporation, not too big, but a corporation sued 3 herbalists who had nothing to do with there's been this myth of us somehow suing them. No, we did not sue them. They didn't. Rosemary did not get sued. I was told, I think on Earth Day, that I was being summoned to Massachusetts for federal court. And it was like 2016 or 2016 when I was sued, but 2015 is when all that stuff started. So we went through this big, long 5-year court battle. We won, and then none of us saw each other because COVID hit.
Wow.
So we were separated across country for 4 years, and then this summer I got to go teach at the International Herb Symposium, which is now led by the wonderful Susan Leopold, and I got to see my Firesider ladies, and we got to give each other hugs, and we had a special little night where Rosemary and Helen Ward and all of us got to sleep over at Mary's place and have a little sleepover. Herbal sleepovers are the best because I just had one afterwards at Margie's with after the conference with Jim McDonald and all these people, and we stayed up all night talking about herb nerd stuff. I mean, that's what I mean. When you get to be around your people and you get to just talk about herbs till 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, there's nothing better.
That's awesome.
So yeah, I got to that Instagram. That Instagram is me and the ladies having fun with each other, getting to see each other after 4 years of being separated, which I'm sure everybody has a story like that where they were separated for many years from loved ones. And so they're like my herbal family. We're definitely like...
You went through trauma together.
Trauma, but we're also like sisters for
Yeah.
life now. Like we have a kind of bond that we feel so lucky in some ways. We thanked the company who sued us because we were like, we would have never gotten to become the friends that we are now had we not gone through what we went through. And I could call them any day or night at any time of day or night, and they would immediately get back to me. Yeah. We have that kind of bond. We used to have to. So now it's like, it's ingrained. Like, what do you need? What's wrong? You know, so we have that kind of bond. Herbal family.
Shire City is no longer around.
The company is gone now. Yeah, I can't say the name of the company.
Oh yeah. Do I need to bleep that out?
You can say it.
All right.
I am not saying it.
I've been emailing back and forth a little bit with Mary Blue. We're gonna have her on the show too.
Yay,
so that'll be really
Mary
exciting.
Blue.
Yeah.
She's great.
Well, thank you for sharing. Would you like to do one more, or?
I'll do one more, and I do want to talk about the future of herbalism real quick because I know I've said a lot.
Totally. Oops.
You have a lot of editing.
Yeah, I actually don't know who this is, so I'm very curious.
Oh. These are good photos.
Hey.
So that's Maria Elena Martinez and Rosa Tupina. And so we, it says my maestra Meme.
Yeah.
So Meme is, and I don't know how she's doing. I need to try to call. She was, the last I spoke to her, she's one of my teachers that is a shamanic practitioner and just so kind and so loving. And we did a festival in her name called Moonflower Herb Fest. And so she's such a kind person that we decided that me and my friend Beth were going to do this festival that centered around her and the energy she creates. And so it was about honoring traditions and honoring our elders because, again, whose shoulders are you standing on? You didn't just learn herbs just to learn, like, where did this come from? Where did these traditions come from? So Maria Elena, what's really funny is she worked with Alma de Mujer for a long time, which is an indigenous women's center, and it's out in hill country. And I worked with her for many, many years, and she would come into the classes and hang out with me and my students. And one day she's like, oh, that's like what Rosemary does. And I'm like, what? And I'm like, Rosemary who? And she goes, Gladstar. And I'm like, you're friends with Rosemary Gladstar? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, how did you become friends with Rosemary? She goes, I've been hanging out with her for years. So she's like super quiet this whole time. Wow. For many years she was coming in classes. I had no idea that she was friends with Rosemary. And she would go out on the plant lovers journeys with her and do all sorts of work with her, especially when they would go to Mexico. And so Meme has got to the point where she could barely get to our festival, Moonflower. And the last I had talked to her, she's kind of leaving us. Like, you know, the people when they start to get to the point where they're kind of here and kind of not. So it's tender in my heart because the last time I called, she didn't answer, and I don't know if she is where she's living now. So, but that next to her is Rosa Tupina, who is the head of a kupuli that would do the moon dance. And so Moonflower Fest, they would bring their kapuli to do a dance with all of us that were from all traditions, and it was so everybody could come together and celebrate together around the Samhain or the darker times of the year, and come together to be close when things were dark. So because I'm a Scorpio, I like dark things. And so, you know, Samhain, all that stuff, we would do Day of the Dead, Dia de las Muertas, and Muertos in Texas, because that's part of the traditions there. So we brought together all traditions, and so that's Rosa and Meme talking about the traditions and how we can be better humans and respect and honor our elders. And that's a big part of, I think, what I love about the herbal community is I was taught how to be a better human with some of my teachers, like how to be kinder to people. I kind of came from like a kind of a punk rock, kind of angry, activist, maybe a family that was not exactly, they were Eastern European that had gotten out of, war. So they weren't exactly, well-adjusted, I would say, emotionally well-adjusted.
Sure.
So veterans usually aren't. So my family came from either being raised by veterans or were part of escaping from war. So to meet humans that taught me how to be a better human and how to be kinder and more compassionate and be more loving. And I do love my family, don't get me wrong. I love them very much, but just the herbal community is, a lot of the people in there are also who taught me how to be who I am now. So they were part of my family.
Beautiful.
Family by choice,
That's right.
So, and I do want to say, but the future of herbalism, I do want to mention, because I think about a lot of things, Mason. I think about a lot of things. I think about a lot. And I've been doing this a while now, and I feel like we're all transforming and evolving. And I want anyone who's been listening to this and got anything out of it to remember that the only thing that matters are the plants. Do not judge yourself by what other people have accomplished. Do not judge yourself by what you see on our social media. Do not judge yourself by fancy websites. Please know that herbalism for the people, by the people, this is a relationship with the planet and the plants, and you don't have to make money off of it. You can do that. Sometimes that takes the fun out of it. So for a long time I saw that, I'm an entrepreneur. That's me. I like it. I like being challenged by figuring stuff out. I don't know how else to do it. I've always been, making things work. In Texas, you had to. There's no healthcare. There's no money anywhere to help you get a grant to do a clinic or something like that. There's nothing like that. In fact, the grant at Hurricane Katrina for us to have a clinic there, a common ground clinic, came from Canada originally. So, that sort of stuff, when you think about where you want to go with herbalism in the future, I saw for a long time a lot of schools and a lot of people were encouraging this idea of herbal entrepreneurship. Be your own, you can go into business, you can make medicine, you can do that. Yes, you can. But not everybody's made for that. And you don't have to do that to be a good herbalist. To be a good herbalist, you just have to care and care about the plants and care about people. And many people, including like Juliet de Barclay-Levy, many people have spent years and years and years in practice, and they might have never made $1 off of it. Did that make them not successful? I disagree. So I think that this capitalist approach to herbalism, that we need to be our own business people, I don't think that's necessarily true. And there's lots of easier ways to make money these days. There's all these side hustles that I've been hearing about that I'm like, that's way easier. I met this amazing herbalist at the IHS who wrote a great book, Rebecca Bayer. You might have heard of her book. She has a book called The Wild Witchcrafter. Yeah. She's so amazing. She's like, I'm not worried about making money off of herbalism. She's like, I'm a tattoo artist. I'm booked out 6 months. And I was like, that's way, way more effective than trying to figure out how to build off the regular old business model of herbalism. I think we need to all evolve and realize that as a community, we can support each other and help the plants and help each other, and not necessarily all be business people to do it. So future of herbalism is wherever you want to bring it, but just make sure it's kindness and compassion that kind of go first with it.
Oof, that's such a, I almost want to end on that note, unless you want to do the fun questions, but that was a very, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And I couldn't agree more. You don't have to make money at it. And just well said, Nicole. Thank you. I like that you were addressing everyone directly too. Yeah, that's a.
Hi, I'm so used to it. I had to do it all through. I got done with being worried about it, because at first I was so worried about the cameras, and now I'm just like, hi guys.
You get really used to it. Hi, I'm Mason.
Hi, I'm Nicole.
Well, we'll wrap that up, and we'll call it good. So thank you for taking all that time to share about the plants and everything, and Michael's work and everything. So
I hope to see people around and see either in gardens or at dinner or wherever we see each other. So I'm excited for the new world and what we can make of it together.
All right. See you in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.
And that's going to do it for today's episode. Thanks so much for listening to the Herb Rally podcast. If you'd like to hear more from us here at Herb Rally, we now have a text message community, believe it or not. Basically, it's just updates from us. We send about 1 to 7 texts per week, notifying you about new events, videos, courses, podcasts. You get the idea. It's pretty much like our email newsletter, just in text form. So if you'd like to receive text messages from Herb Rally, just text JOIN, that's JOIN, to the number 541-256-2895. Again, that's JOIN to number 541-256-2895. And to stop receiving texts, that's easy too. Just text STOP to the same number. It'll opt you out immediately. Okay, thanks again for listening. Have a great rest of your day.